What's up guys, it's Kelly and today I've got another swatch review for you. So make sure you hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so you don't miss out on new videos, and let's get started. So it seems like lately I have been in the mood to try out somewhat gimmicky products and share them with you guys. And today is no exception. We're actually going to be talking about the Salon Perfect one-step gel pens today. So basically it is a tube that has gel nail polish in it and it's got a little brush at the end. So I thought that was a pretty funky concept. I know this is nothing new, but I've never tried it before. And Salon Perfect just came out with 6 gel pen colors, so I thought I would try them out and do a little swatch and review for you guys and then let you know what I think. So first things first, just to go over what it is, this is what the product looks like. It comes in this little container. You get a little tub of gel polish, which I think is actually really funky. So it looks really small, but it's actually 10 milliliters, which is a kind of decent size for a nail polish product. But yeah, it's basically a tube that you squeeze out and then there's a little brush on the end and you use that to apply the gel. So since this is a gel, you do need to cure it in between each layer so it does not dry by air. Salon Perfect did also come out with a new lamp, and it's the kind of little mouse lamp that I actually really like. So they just have this nice little simple lamp that you can use with it, and it's actually a pretty travel friendly kit. Like, this is very small. It is a one step, so technically you wouldn't need base or top coat. Just a really quick rundown of how it works. I mean, it's honestly pretty self-explanatory. You just have the gel polish in here and you just squeeze it out and you apply it onto your nails as if it were a nail polish brush. So yeah, we've got 6 colors to go over today, so I swatched them all for you. I'm going to show you the colors, I'm going to let you know my thoughts on them, and then we'll see what we think. So roll footage. So here are what all of the gel pens look like outside of the packaging, and as you can see, they're basically just little squeeze tubes. So if you open one up, you'll see that there's a little white brush on each one. So what I did was just squeeze until product came out, and I realized it kind of differed based on the brush. Some of them were like upside down like this. So I'll show you guys this first color. It's called Tropical Punch, and you can see I ended up squeezing out a lot in that first little squeeze. So I kind of had a lot on the brush and I didn't really know what to do with it. So I tried like glopping it onto my nail and then painting that, and then I realized that that was just way too much product, and I tried to wipe some of it off on a piece of paper and keep going, but I had just squeezed out so much and it was just kind of impossible to work with. So I scratched this nail, I wiped it off, and I started over. So the second attempt went a lot smoother. What I ended up doing, first of all, you definitely want to work with super thin layers here. So what I ended up doing was squeezed out a little bit and then did not squeeze any more out. And I know that might sound like it's obvious, but when you're holding the tube, it feels really easy to like continue squeezing as you apply to make sure that you're getting enough product on the nail. But no, I just did one squeeze and then I would kind of dot that onto my nail. Since it didn't go to the tip of the brush, it kind of went to the middle of the brush. I would dot it onto my nail and then I pushed it around with the brush. Now thankfully, since these are gel pens, they do not dry by air, so you can really take your time with making sure that application is perfect. And I also wanted to work with, like I said, super thin layers just to make sure that it wasn't really gloopy in any areas and uneven, and so that it would cure really smoothly in between layers. So I ended up doing 3 coats for full coverage, and I know that kind of sounds like a lot, but you can see I was working with extremely thin layers here. So the 3 coats without base or top coat is actually really thin on the nails. So I ended up liking the way that this looked. It definitely took a little bit to get used to the feel of it. It ended up being pretty decent. So here it is fully cured in 3 coats. You can see I kind of have a little bump in one part. These are not self-leveling. You kind of have to level them out yourself, but it's fairly easy because the brush is pretty nice. So moving on to the next shade, Copacabana Girl, and this one is more of like an almost neon orangey red shade, and you can see when I squeezed this one out, it actually didn't gloop out of the side, it just kind of went through the center. So I was like, okay, maybe the first one was a fluke and you're supposed to apply it like this. So I tried doing that and the exact same thing happened. I didn't realize it, but as I was applying it, I was like subconsciously squeezing the tube, and I ended up having way too much on my nail, and as soon as I realized that this was the thickest coat of all time, I decided to start over once again. So the second attempt went smoother, but I will say this color in particular was not as easy to apply as the first color, Tropical Punch. I think it's really pretty, and I do always let you guys know that neon polishes tend to have a little bit more difficult of a formula. They're either super chalky and like difficult to move around on the nails, or they're extremely thin, and I kind of felt like this color in particular was a combination of both. So you can see it really wasn't applying very smoothly. It felt very thick on the nails, and I think that's due to just the color, not the formula of the actual product. So I had a hard time making it look nice and even on my nails, and because I was working in the thin coats, it was just so gloopy. I would have to pause and squeeze out some more and then apply that as well. So yeah, didn't have the easiest time with this one. It ended up giving me 3 coats for full coverage, and I thought that the color itself looked decent, but like I said, it didn't really self-level too well. So even though this is a one-step gel and it doesn't technically require a top coat, if you're into this color, I do recommend picking up a gel top coat because I think it'll smooth out the manicure a lot more and it'll make it look a lot nicer. I also feel like because all of the product was coming through the center, it wasn't as easy to apply it, if that makes sense. Like I had an easier time with Tropical Punch because I just kind of splotched it onto the nail. But you can see this is fully cured. It wasn't very self-level, but the color is really pretty. So by swatch number 3, I was really getting the hang of the product, and what I ended up doing was just kind of splotch out that blob on a piece of paper and then get some on the tip of the bristles so that I could apply a nice smooth cuticle line area. So I moved on to this color Vavavroom, which is very deceptive because the little bottle and the packaging make it look like it's going to be a lime green, but it's actually more of a neon highlighter yellow. But I do like colors like this. I've mentioned before, but yellow nail polish is extremely difficult to get opaque, especially a neon like this. So it ended up taking me 4 coats to get it to some sort of opacity. I still feel like I could have used a 5th coat, and like I said, I'm working with extremely thin layers here, so 5 coats of this extremely thin layer probably feels equivalent to like 2 or 3 coats of a regular polish, and you're not even using base or top coat, so it feels super thin on the nails. But this one also kind of had that chalky like feeling to it as Copacabana Girl did, so I think some of the formulas on some of the colors are definitely a little bit more difficult than others. I feel like the more classic shades that you know tend to have good formulas. Like with Salon Perfect, I know that their pinks and their blues are going to be a decent formula. I think those are the ones that you should probably grab for if you're interested in buying these. But yeah, by the 4th coat, it did end up looking pretty decent on the nails. Again, it wasn't very self-leveling. I do think that a top coat would help this out, and I was impressed that I did manage to get this bright color in 4 coats without like a white base coat. Now there is a white gel pen as well, which I'm also swatching, so it might be a better idea to layer this one over a coat or 2 of the white, but I mean, I'm pretty impressed with how it turned out in 4 coats. You can still see a little bit of patchiness near the cuticle there. Next up, we have the shade in Mint Condition, which is a very soft minty green blue shade. And this one, I thought this one was going to give me some trouble just because it's another light pastel-y kind of shade, and these ones in drugstore formulas tend to give me a difficult time. But I actually thought that this one ended up being relatively easy to work with. On the first coat, it was definitely on the patchy side, and you can see it took me a while to kind of push everything around to get a nice even coat, but I ended up actually getting full coverage in 3 thin coats, which I thought was pretty impressive, especially considering, like I've been saying multiple times throughout this video, but I am working with supremely thin coats here. So this definitely feels like literally probably half the thickness of a regular coat of nail polish for me, and it definitely doesn't feel thick on the nails at all. Like I would actually say this doesn't really feel like a gel manicure on the nails at all. It kind of felt more like a very thin nail polish. So if you want that gel feeling on your nails, again, I do think that a gel top coat would be a great option for this. As far as I know, Salon Perfect doesn't sell a gel top coat, but there are definitely some great drugstore gel top coats that you can use, and I think they would probably pair well with this one. Again, you can kind of see not too self-leveling here, but because it is a gel, I was really taking my time trying to smooth everything out. The only problem that I found was because these bristles are so stiff, and it might just be because it's a relatively new bottle, but because the bristles are so stiff, the more that I moved it around, the more I kind of pulled some of the polish from my cuticle area. So I kept on having to go back and kind of fix those cuticle areas because it felt like I had a little bit of patchiness. Next up, we have the shade Way Back When, which is actually a really gorgeous, slightly dusty blue cream shade. And this one was actually by far the best formula that I worked with out of all of these pens. Now that might be because it did take me a good amount of tries to get this right, but I do also think that the particular formula of this color was really smooth and easy to work with. You can see I almost started off getting too much onto my little brush pen, but I wiped some of it off on a piece of scrap paper, and that first coat ended up being pretty thin. And then when I went in with the second coat, I realized that I did have the full coverage that I was looking for, which I thought was really impressive. Again, I do think it's also a case of I was getting used to the product and it was easier to work with. I also think I was working with slightly thicker coats here, not intentionally, but because it was such an easy formula, it didn't feel as difficult to work with slightly thicker coats. So here it is in those two coats. This one also felt the most gel-like for me, probably because I was using slightly thicker coats. But yeah, absolutely easy formula to work with. Definitely enjoyed this one the most. And then finally, we have the shade Pillow Talk, and this is a white cream shade. And this one ended up being probably the most sheer out of all of them. You can definitely tell in the first coat that it does have that milky white color to it, but I did expect that because since it's a gel, like I said 50,000 times, I am using super thin coats here, but I did think that it was going to build up to a nice opacity, and I ended up being somewhat disappointed in that. It was a little bit on the chalky side. It was definitely on the sheer side. I wouldn't personally wear this color on its own just because it was a little too difficult to get to the full coverage. Like honestly, I did do 4 coats to get full opacity, and I still think I could have used more, but it just felt like no matter how many layers I did, it just wasn't getting more opaque, especially in the cuticle area where, like I said, the more I moved the product around, the more I feel like I was pulling some of the product off of that cuticle area and creating this new type of patchiness. And it was also not a self-leveling one. I think out of all of them, the only ones that really kind of self-leveled were the blue shade and then the reddish pink shade. So here's what it ended up looking like after the 4 coats. You can see a little lumpy, definitely a little patchy in some spots, but I do think that this would be a useful color to wear as a base. I also feel like I could potentially do some really cool abstract brushstrokey nail art with this. So here are all of these shades together, fully swatched, and honestly, looking at this little chart, it's very deceptive because I feel like it looks like these are actually pretty decent gel polishes, but I will say it was definitely a little bit troublesome to apply some of them, especially the more sheer colors. Definite wins on Tropical Punch and Way Back When. I thought those were the best by far. If you are patient and you're willing to, give these a shot, I think it is actually really fun to use them. I think there's just a bit of a learning curve that you need to adjust to before you can fully get a good manicure out of it, but because they're only 10 milliliter bottles and you might be wasting a lot while trying to figure it out, it's going to be a little bit difficult. You might need to buy more than one. So yeah, those were the one-step gel pens. I will say it was definitely an interesting experience using them. One difficulty that I had just with getting started was because the product, when you squeeze it out, it actually comes to like the center of the brush instead of the tip of the brush, which is what I would expect with like a normal polish application experience. I found that I kind of had to like splotch it onto the nail before I started painting it. But one thing that I found actually helped was to have a piece of scrap paper so I can kind of wipe the brush, make sure that there was some product on the tip of the bristles, and then I could start painting a little bit easier. I did like that it came out in really thin coats, so I didn't feel like I was using too much product and it wasn't going to cure evenly, but I was a little bit disappointed in some of the colors just not being really easy application. But overall, I thought it was a really interesting product. I would definitely be curious to see more of them, but I think these particular ones are kind of hit or miss. I like the travel size friendliness of them. I think they're really like convenient. I think it's like a fun kind of gimmick that makes you want to paint your nails. And I also feel like this could be a potential cool opportunity for some nail art just because it feels like you're using a pen when you're applying it, a brush pen. I don't know. I do think there are pros and cons to this type of product. I don't think it would work if it was regular nail polish because it being gel, it's not going to dry super quickly, so you can take your time to kind of apply it. But of course the cons being that gel nail polish is notoriously difficult to remove. I actually ended up using peel off base coat for these swatches. As far as prices, like I said, these are 10 milliliter bottles. They are deceptively small, although for the ones that take a bunch of coats, it does end up using up a lot more product than expected. So I definitely recommend the more opaque ones if you want to get multiple full manicures out of it. But yeah, the gel pens cost $6.50 USD each, and then the lamp retails for $9.99 USD. So these are available on the Salon Perfect website as well as at Walmart, so I will link those down below for you guys so you can check them out if you're interested. But yeah, like I said, I'm curious to hear from you guys. What do you think of these? Have you tried them? Are you interested in trying them? Do you think it's an annoying gimmick? Do you think it's an awesome gimmick? Let me know your thoughts. You know, I love to chat with you guys in the comments. If you enjoy my swatching reviews and you are interested in seeing more funky stuff, please give this one a thumbs up. It lets me know I'm doing a good job. Huge shout out to my Cosmic Admirals on Patreon, Amanda M, Braxton Scott, and Rainbow J. I really appreciate the support, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye. All right, today's fun fact question comes from Patreon supporter Diane Eason, and Diane wants to know, I've noticed you started to wear more rings lately. Have you become a big ring fan, or did you just decide that your clatter ring was lonely and that it needed some friends to hang out with? Yeah, so I have been wearing more rings recently, and that is a combination of a bunch of things. One, I like to fidget, and when I have a ring to fidget with, it's fun. Two, as Diane pointed out, I do have a clatter ring that my boyfriend gave me, and I just feel like it's more fun to have a bunch of rings on. And three, I actually recently cleaned out my jewelry and found a ton of old rings because I always buy rings, or I used to, I haven't in a while, but I used to always buy a bunch of rings and be like, oh, I'm gonna be one of those people who wears like a bunch of rings, but then I would never be able to find them. So I would just buy more rings, and then I would just have like a week of wearing those rings, but then I could never find them. But now that I finally have all of my jewelry organized in a nice jewelry organizer, I'm able to find and collect all of my rings so I can wear a lot of them more often. And I just kind of like the way they look. It's like, well, it is an accessory. That's what rings are. Anyway, that's it. I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye!